is Jason JROCK Houston, and you're listening to Chaotic Riffs Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.chaoticriffs.com. And our special guest tonight is Saint Tragedy drummer Jason Scufham. Am I pronouncing your name right? Or Scufham? Scufham, is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Jason, for taking time to talk to us. I really appreciate it. Now, I understand your band was formed in 2008, so I was kind of curious if you could share with us, the story of how the band first got together.
As far as the original band, I'm not exactly sure.
Oh, okay. So what's the story of?
I actually joined about 5 years ago.
Okay, and so talk a bit about how you hooked up with the guys and got the gig.
Well, I used to work with the bass player and played in another band with him before joining with ST. So the drummer before me had some stuff come up, and they needed me to substitute for a show. So I learned the songs, substituted it, and then they needed me for a couple more.
Wow!
And that's just kind of went into me becoming a full-time drummer. So.
Oh, cool! That's cool. Now let me ask you. So did it help? Like when you joined the band, you were friends with the bass player. I mean, did you guys previously play together? Because it must be great to kind of have that rhythm section where you kind of know the guy and you guys can probably lock in good together.
Oh yeah, I moved back into the area that we're in. Was it back in 2005?
Oh wow!
And I was going out to some open jams and stuff, and actually met Eric at an open jam and got together, played. So formed a band a while back, played in that one for about 3 years, 4 years, something like that. And then I actually, during that time, I actually got a job at the same place he did.
Oh, okay.
And so we actually worked together outside the bands also.
Oh, that's great. That makes it that much easier. When you finally join up with the band and you have a guy in the band that you already know, it makes that much easier to, I guess, get to know the other guys.
Oh yeah, we know each other pretty well, so it worked out real well having us both in the rhythm section. We just kind of locked in together.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Now let me ask you a little more about your history. As far as you, I was curious, how old were you when you first started playing the drums? And I was curious if you took lessons at an early age, or are you kind of self-taught?
No, I started when I was in the 5th grade.
Okay, wow.
That was way back when.
Yeah.
No, I was given private lessons on there, and then kind of did the whole school band, orchestra, jazz, anything I can get into through schools, the marching band, what have you. So. And so
I know a lot of.
I've had quite a bit of instruction behind it.
Well, and I know a lot of drummers, like you said, they get their start early on, in the school band and that. So, how different is that? Playing like your typical school band to getting into your first professional rock gig.
Oh, geez, well, the big difference that I found, going through all that, and, getting in my first band was the opinions between everybody. Working with that.
Yeah.
Trying to understand how all of them work together in that situation, whereas the band stuff is already laid out in front of you. These are your parts. The conductor's up there doing it. So
that's kind of interesting. Now let me ask you: when you were coming up, who were some of your favorite drummers as far as the guys that influenced you?
Obviously, Buddy Rich. Huge with him.
Yeah.
I actually got to see him play one time.
Wow.
That was like mind blowing for me.
I've seen old videos of Buddy Rich, and I know he's a guy that really influenced guys like Carmine Appice. I know he's a real physical player.
Oh yeah. Like I said, I got to see him. The drum instructor I had when I was first being taught.
Oh wow.
Actually, was his drum tech for that show.
How cool! How cool is that? So, wow.
Yeah. I almost got to meet him, but it was later on in life where he really wasn't seeing anybody afterwards.
Yeah. Well,
but yeah.
Well, talk about going back. That's quite an influence. Wow.
Yeah, but growing up in in the 80s, I had all the hair bands and the metal bands.
Yeah, yeah.
When I first started, it was a lot of 50s, 60s. So, Ringo Starr, Charlie Watts.
Oh, wow.
All sorts of guys like that.
And it's funny, like you mentioned Charlie Watts and Ringo Starr. These are like veteran guys that have been on the scene for many, many years now. But it's like anything, like they say the cream of the crop, rises to the top, and these guys are legendary in their own rights, and they're still doing it because I mean, just look at what the huge talent those two guys are, what they bring to their. Yeah. It's just amazing. Now, of course, you're in the band Saint Tragedy, as we mentioned, and I love it. I just love the name of the band, and I don't know if you know anything about the how the band came up with that name or not, but I love that name for a simple fact. It kind of reminds me of you read stuff about how people say that almost everybody in life has to suffer a tragedy or go through something or some kind of major loss. Or I heard this song years ago. It's called Life Loves a Tragedy. It just kind of reminds you that we're all human and we all have to go through things.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where it does come into that. Part of it is unrealization that some of the tragedies that we go through are can be a blessing for us when you look back after time. I mean, tragedies in itself, are horrible. Nobody should go through them, but
but it's part of life.
We learn.
And it's kind of interesting. Right before I was getting ready to talk to you tonight, I went online. I was watching the lyric video for your song, "No More Religion," and I just watching the words come over the screen, and it was really found to be quite prolific. I mean, what I got out of the song and the lyrics, just listening to the tune, was kind of, it reminds me of how, like, in modern day today, that a lot of people, there's all this PC scold, if you know what I mean. For example, you can't even watch Oscar awards, and be entertained. I mean, a lot of people didn't tune in this year because you have all this PC scolding on. Well, if you don't believe like I do, you're a bad person, and all this. I'm like, if I'm watching that, like the movie awards, I want to be entertained. I want to see people up there singing and dancing, and there really wasn't too much of that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, that's kind of, it does touch into those areas of beliefs.
Yeah.
And it's not just a religious or political. It's
whatever you want to be talking about, specifically. Where my kind of I grew up in the day where there were opposite sides of people were allowed to have opposite different opposing views, and they wouldn't really necessarily attack you. I mean, there are people like we're supposed to, for example, stand up for free speech. There are college campuses that students are protesting certain speakers because they don't agree with what they have to say. I'm like, maybe if you give a person a chance, hear what they have to say, maybe you might be moved. But I just, and then depending like on certain news channels you watch, there are some that have what you call fake news, or it's bented too far one way. Whereas I remember when I was growing up, the journalists at the time, they had a pride in we're going to deliver the news. We're going to report it the way according to it happened, not how we wish it happened. You know what I mean? And I kind of see the world.
Like the whole the scene from Good Morning Vietnam, when you see him editing all that.
Yeah. And so I was kind of curious. Now I know you guys. You recently released a new album called I believe it's called Prolonging the Agony. Talk a little bit about that. I mean, how many tunes are on the album, and are people able to get physical copies and all that?
Yes, people can get physical copies. All they got to do is just go ahead and message us at the moment. We're getting everything else signed up, so you can actually pay for it online and everything.
Oh, that's cool.
But we do have physical copies, and the physical copy actually has a song that's not on the digital copy.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Because
well, it's also vice versa. One of the songs on the digital copy is not on the physical copy.
Well, that's cool. It almost makes it like kind of like a special event, or almost like a collector's item. Well, if you want to get this version, you also have a choice to get two different versions. But I love that. And sad thing about that is, I'm an old school guy. I love to have a CD in my hand. I mean, I'll share a story with you. I was recently in a local Best Buy because I live in Los Angeles area, and you would think there would be plenty of record stores down here, but for the most part, I'll be honest, I get most of my my CDs either from Best Buy or off of Amazon, because half the stuff I want you can't even find at Best Buy. But the local Best Buy store recently, I was in there, and the guy told me, "Is there anything I can help you find? Because I just want to inform you that come July, Best Buy isn't going to be selling any more physical CDs, although you can still go to our website and order it online." I'm like, man, how sad is that,
It is. I mean, it's like vinyl is making a huge comeback, and
yeah, which is
really got to look for it.
Which is the funniest thing, because I've seen a lot of the new releases, like even like at the local Barnes and Noble stores, or I've seen some stuff advertised on Amazon. Like you said, a lot of the new releases are releasing limited edition vinyls, and the funny thing to me about that is a lot of people tell me that they're going out and getting vinyl just for the pure fact that they think it's like a collector's thing. And a lot of people tell me, man, I'm going out and I'm going to get everything on vinyl, but you know what? I don't even have a turntable anymore. I'm like, wow.
Yeah. It's, well, then, looking at that, it's with the technology out nowadays.
Yeah.
You see these videos of kids trying to figure out how to use a tape player.
To tape it. Yeah. It's like, wow. You're lucky if you can even find as far as that goes, if you can even find a blank audio cassette in any of the stores anymore. Pretty soon I think,
right?
Even the blank CDs are going to be obsolete. It's just it's amazing, because one thing about technology, as great as it is, I think that's why a lot of these kids, they want, I'm not even going to buy the whole album, I'll just buy a song or two. Whereas, like I said, I want the full experience. I want I want to hold the thing. I want to see it when I go to the store. Okay, we get 12 tracks here, whatever the case may be. So, like with this latest album, Prolonging the Agony, how many tunes are on the album? 6. Oh, okay. So is this like your latest release, or you decide we're going to release these 6 songs for now, and then we'll go in the studio, maybe a couple months and start working on another set of tunes?
Well, we kind of started out with No More Religion.
Okay.
We got that one done first because we're starting to wanted to really kind of get things going and stuff. And then we decided, okay, well, let's go ahead and, get back in there and do some more. So we decided on which ones we wanted to do.
Yeah.
Went back in, decided for the EP, and, just going to kind of
go from there.
Work out the EP from there, so.
Okay, and then let me ask you, like, when you guys were in the studio recording those 6 tunes, was everybody, like, in the same room together, or did everybody kind of do it the modern way, which is where, like, for example, you would go and record your drum parts, and then the other guys would come in and record their parts?
It was pretty much the latter of the two. The guitars and the vocals went in, did a scratch track for me just so I could play along.
Yeah.
I went in, laid down the drums, and then they came in and they put me off in a little room all by myself.
Yeah.
And then the other guys, they recorded straight into the equipment, in the control room.
Wow. And now, I hear you. I know you guys are signed to Pavement Entertainment, which I think is a great little label. I was kind of curious, how did you hook up with them? Did they reach out to you guys, or did you send them a package and they like what they heard?
That's actually kind of a funny story. We had submitted to Pavement a while back, and this was kind of before we refined the sound and cleaned up a lot of things. And at that time, they said they weren't really interested in stuff, which I get it. I was cool with that.
Okay,
I don't blame them.
We'll go and polish our stuff. Yeah.
It's good to hear that stuff. So we went back in, got everything cleaned up, did what we needed to do, and we just kind of let it back out. We didn't release it again, or we didn't give it to anybody, any labels or anything.
Yeah.
We did happen to give it to the local radio station, which does what they call a 420 hit of the day.
Oh, okay.
And on Wednesdays they do a 420 homegrown hit of the day.
Oh, wow.
Which, it's all local bands on that day.
That's cool. Cool.
Yeah, we call up, puff or pass, and if you get enough bucks, they play it again.
I get. Yeah, okay, wow.
Yeah. So, we were informed that we were going to be on the 420 hit of the day, and we're like, cool.
Wow.
Well, that same day, Tim from Pavement was going home. He had the station on, and I guess when he got home or wherever he went,
yeah,
he contacted us and said, "Hey, I heard you on this. I want to work with you. I heard you, did that before. Let's do this now. So it's
wow! So
cool.
That's great. You guys must have made some kind of impression on him initially, even though he kind of rejected you guys the first time around. But for the fact that he hears you guys on this little radio station, and he remembers you from way back then. Wow.
Well, actually, it never got to him the first time.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So,
talk about small world, Wow, I love that even more.
Yeah, I mean, for the president of the, or for the vice president of A&R and everything to contact us, it was like, just mind blowing.
Yeah, and what I love about the Pavement label is that they got like just such a huge talented roster of different types of artists. I mean, I've interviewed several of the bands on the label, and what I love, like you were mentioning, that Tim King, who nobody, who some people may or may not know who he is, he's also the bass player from the metal band Soil. And I love the fact that you have a label, very much like what David Ellison's doing these days, run and operated by a guy that's an actual musician himself. He's actually one of these guys who's lived the life. And now he's in a position where he can help other bands, and I dig that because unlike a label you have owned by just a guy in a suit who's nothing more than a businessman, where the first album didn't sell, we're dropping you guys. This guy's lived a life. So he's in a much better place to give advice to the bands that are on his label, and I think that is so cool. He can say, well, this is. I've been here this many years. This is what we've done, and let me advise you guys. I think that is so cool.
Yeah, having them in our corner, helping us out and everything. Yeah. It's been a blessing and an honor, really, to have them back there. We couldn't ask for anything better.
Yeah, and again, you listen to a band like Soil that's almost full blown on metal, and you'd expect a guy like that to sign nothing but metal acts to his label, which it's really the furthest thing from that. I mean, he's got rap backs. I mean, I interviewed one of the other bands on the label the other day called We Are Band Nerds. Like I said, it's kind of it's kind of like they got it like a kind of a Deftones thing going, but it's a little more rap metal type thing. But I dig the fact that like they're not all metal acts. You know what I mean? It's a little something on there for everybody.
It's great because it gives a lot of diversity and just opens up that much for other people too.
Yeah.
Not only for the bands to get up and go out and get a chance, but also for the fans and everything to experience new stuff. It's great.
And so I know you guys have had this album or this EP out since end of January. So I was curious, what's been the response you gotten so far from the fans?
We've had a lot of really good responses everywhere we've gone. We see people singing with it, and we actually had one guy from the Netherlands message us and ask if we were coming over there.
Well, again, I mean, how cool is that? I mean, talk a little bit about the power of internet there. I mean, it's got to be great when you get somebody from the Netherlands, messaging you, and I'm almost willing to bet you guys haven't played there yet, and you're kind of thinking, well, this guy is halfway around the world. We've never stepped foot in his country, and he's checking out our music right now as we speak,
You're like, it's mind-blowing. It really is. Just, that somebody halfway across the world hears it and just loves it and can connect with it.
Yeah.
It would mean a lot, really, to actually get over there and experience, what they're hearing.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because a lot of music fans, outside of the United States, they are really dedicated to their bands. They are really hardcore. I mean, you take a band like Mr. Big. That's an American band, but they're huge. They're more huge over in Japan than they are here. And from my understanding, they're at the point in their career where they can play like 5 or 6 shows a year in Japan, and and these guys make bank, and then they have their other projects to work on, throughout the rest of the year. It's just amazing. And then I love European fans. I understand that they listen to every single song when a band's up on stage playing. They don't do none of this throwing stuff on stage. They have a lot more respect for the bands, from what I understand.
It's weird from what I've heard, years ago I was, over in France.
Wow.
And it was a long time. It was before the music industry, took hold of me.
Yeah.
But went out to a party and they were just entranced by the music and really getting into it and showing the support for the bands that were up there, playing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like just a couple people.
Mm-hmm.
The place was packed, and you could see just the energy because they wanted to hear the music. Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, and you bring up a funny point, like as far as like the music business, because I think several years ago the record industry really screwed themselves over. I mean, there are a lot of bands like we're talking about the fact that you're signed to Pavement Entertainment. There are a lot of bands that don't even have a record label anymore. They just in a lot of ways, when I say the record industry screwed themselves, I mean. A lot, you don't even need necessarily, except it helps, of course, for tour financing and stuff like that. But you don't even necessarily need a record company anymore behind you. Like I said, it helps a lot. But bands can go out, just release their own music, and there's pros and cons to it all, But at the end of the day, if you put out your own music, you have the power to kind of put it out there how you want to put it out there, and you don't have a guy in a suit like I was talking about earlier telling you, I don't hear a hit, go write me something more radio friendly. And so, like I said, there's pros and cons to it all,
It is. I mean, like I said, having Pavement behind us is a blessing. People that in the industry, a lot of times, they're so busy with stuff you can get looked over. And it's not for any one reason or another. It's just it happens.
Well,
you get the label behind you. They've got different contacts.
Yeah.
And, like you said, the support behind them, so it opens up a lot of doors.
Yeah. I mean, especially with
the internet.
Yeah, I mean, especially a label like Pavement. I mean, like you said, the fact that you got so many great bands on that one roster. I mean, I know a lot of times they in the past what they've done is put several of their bands on one tour together, and it's just a great way to get those bands out there and a little more exposure than what they would typically get.
I'm dying to play with Candlebox. I have to admit, I'm dying to get on something with them somewhere.
That's funny. You bring Candlebox is an interesting band, because I know they too are signed to Pavement. That they're one of those bands that they were popular back in the day, if you know what I mean, when they first came out, and then they went away for a few years. Everybody kind of forgot about them, and then when they signed with Pavement a couple years ago, and they put their first thing out in several years. I mean, it's like they never left.
Oh yeah. No, it's great.
Yeah, but it's amazing how many people forgot about that one band. That's a great example. And then this one little label, makes them an offer, and people are loving them all over again, or they're even just discovering the band for the first time.
Yeah, and like I said, it's the pros and cons of having everything.
Yeah.
The internet, you could do it yourself, but you don't have the years, you don't have
the contact. That's amazing. And see, I mean, like I said, it goes both ways. But I think in this, you hear all this stuff about how rock is dead, and I think to a certain extent it is. But at the same time, like we mentioned earlier, the cream always rises. And what I mean by that, okay, for example, you guys are a band that's been around since 2008, and like you told me, you didn't get in with Pavement the first time around, but second time around, things kind of worked out for the better. You guys got now a label behind you, and that's great because it tells you we must be doing something right, because it's not like I said, even a lot of the major bands that were once selling millions of records, even a lot of them they don't have anybody back them anymore. It just is amazing. And the fact that you guys do, I said, okay, well, this band's got something obviously going because, we got somebody backing us. That's got to be a great feeling.
Oh, it is. I mean, knowing that our music has touched somebody like that and what we have to say through it, people wanting to work with it and, help us get it out there.
Yeah, because
what else can a musician want?
Yeah, because I mean, when you and I were coming up, I mean, back in the day, bands did not tour unless they, had new product out, and a lot of bands these days, because the music business is what it is, they're following the business practice of, you know what, nobody's buying CDs anymore, so we're not gonna bother writing or recording any new music. We're just gonna live off our catalog of music, and to a certain extent, those bands can do that. But that's why I dig new bands like you guys, for the simple fact you continue to put out new music. Because to me, that's what it's all about. If you're just living off your catalog music, you're becoming more of a nostalgia act, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and to me, I could never see doing that, because you get into the music, you get into playing, you get up on that stage because, like I said, interacting with the fans, being able to see what they're feeling, it's amazing. Why keep writing, if you've done this stuff before, I can get, but at the same point, why stop if you don't have to? I mean, if that's what you love doing, do it.
I mean, and when I say like the industry really screwed themselves, I mean, you have a lot of these people go on these shows like American Idol, The Voice. It's great, some of those talented as those people may be. The thing to me about it is a lot of those people, they may get their 15 minutes of fame, and in many cases it really is 15 minutes. They're up there on, they get signed, but then when the next single they put out doesn't sell 100 million copies or whatever it is, you get dropped and everybody forgets about you. And what I really admire about a lot of the musicians I grew up on is they really paid their dues. They started out in the clubs and they really they started out playing cover tunes and playing other people's music. They did whatever it took to get their band signed. And then once they got signed, they did whatever they had to keep a record deal and go out there and deliver the goods, as they say.
Yeah. Well, that it works for people, and some people it doesn't, like us.
Yeah.
I kind of live by the, from what I've read, and maybe it's wrong, I don't know, but I read this in an interview a long time ago with Aerosmith. They went in, they didn't do a lot of the covers and stuff, they played their stuff. Yeah. And that's what they stuck to,
Yeah.
And that's where I think, Saint Tragedy comes in and says, this is what we are, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Take it as it is.
Yeah, this is what we're about. I mean, I don't know if I'll tell you though. For example, I'm a huge Kiss fan. I don't know if you are, but people always trash. That's one band that always gets trashed. They're like, these guys are not great musicians. But the thing with a band like that, they've been around for over 40 years, and what they may lack up as far as musicians, the two core guys, they're great songwriters for the simple fact that, I mean, who hasn't heard Rock and Roll All Night or Shout It Out Loud or Beth on the radio, in the past 40 years. And these are songs that have staying power. And that's, to me, the key to any band being successful. You got to have the songs. I mean, you can be the fastest playing guitar shredder, but if that's all you can do and you don't really have any soul or melody to the music, you're not going to go too far, in my opinion.
Yeah, you've got to be able to put, you got to be able to close your eyes and let whatever's inside you out, because that's what people's going to hear. You can be as technical, as fast, and accurate as you want.
Yeah.
Like you said, if you don't have that, feeling behind it, you're great, it's wow, it's awesome, but there's not an impact.
There's no feeling really there. Yeah. It's like.
Yeah.
And I was curious, you mentioned being influenced by Buddy Rich, who, like I said, I seen tons of videos of him online. I mean, he was much before my time, but man, as far when you think of drummers, a lot of times drummers, there's two types of drummers, obviously. A type that are a guy that just kind of sits on the backstage and keeps his time and isn't too flashy. Then there's guys like Buddy Rich or Carmine Appice. They're real physical players. And tell you a story about Carmine Appice. I once had the opportunity to interview him, and he was telling me, he says, my whole thing is, he goes, I didn't want to be the guy in the backstage. I wanted to bring the drums up center stage. And he was telling me that he was actually one that out here in California, he had that idea initially for the Tower Records drumathon, because they had this guitar-thon for years, and he's kind of fell out with the people at Tower Records. They tried to steal his idea, but he was the guy that started that, and he was all like, I didn't want to just be in the backstage. I wanted to be the guy that everybody noticed, and that's kind of a cool thought, because when you think of most drummers, they do just kind of sit back there and keep time.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question's going to be my question to you is like, so when you're doing a show these days, what kind of drummer would you say you are? Are you kind of really physical and you want people to notice you, or do you just kind of do what fits the song?
I'm more the project drummer, as far as how it goes. I like to do what the song calls. So
There you go.
I tend to play more towards Charlie Watts, and Phil Rudd, and Ringo Starr. They weren't real flashy.
Yeah.
But like they said, the great ones, they just do what they do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I go to is I sit back, I do what songs call for. As far as bringing the drums forward, I've been told that I've got an old North drum set.
Okay.
From what I've seen, they're pretty rare.
Yeah.
So everyone talks about that because they're all horned out and everything. That's the first thing they see when we're setting up is this gigantic horned drum set.
Wow.
Yeah, so I figure the set in itself does all the flash, just play.
Flash, there you go.
The song calls for it and feel it.
Wow, that's cool. And now, I got to be honest with you, Jason. The only song I've really had a chance to hear so far is No More Religion. Now, with just that one track, like I told you, I felt the lyrics were really prolific. It really touched me. And my question to you, like, I don't know how you feel about having your music label, but how would you, people that have never heard of the band, how would you describe overall sound? Because, like, listening to that one track, I could say, I don't know that there's elements of metal, but it's a little softer. It's kind of, it's not necessarily a ballad, but it really does speak to you, if you know what I mean. And so, how would you say the overall sound of the band is if you had to describe it to somebody who's just, going to be checking the band out for the first time?
We've been described as kind of an Alice in Chains, Shinedown meets Godsmack.
Okay.
You think of, say, the 80s hair metal.
Yeah.
Because the rhythm section, that's where, that's where we grew up in. Was that influence?
Okay, yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in there that, people have. I've heard some weird things too, just that you wouldn't think of, but when you sit down and look, like, oh, wait a minute, I do hear a little bit of psychedelic fur in the background. Yeah,
it's funny you say that because that's part of the reason I asked you, because like when I listened to one track, No More Religion, to me, something about it did have a bit of, it wasn't like an overly heavy tune, but it did have a bit of an Alice in Chains vibe to me, to my ears anyways. And so that's kind of interesting. And, okay, and so I was curious.
If you check out the track, I'm sorry. If you check out the track, Would I Lie?
Okay.
To me, that has more of a Godsmack opening to it.
Wow.
And it just pounds right through.
Wow. And so you mentioned it as was I, because I think we come from the same era. But you mentioned being a fan of a lot of the hair bands. So I got to ask, how did you feel when all of a sudden the hair metal music that was once so popular in the 80s, everybody kind of turned their back on, when grunge kind of hit and Nirvana and Alice in Chains and all these bands hit? I mean, do you remember how you felt at the time?
Oh, yeah. I couldn't believe that it was happening. That was, early 90s?
Yeah.
It started coming through, sitting in high school, the long hair and everything else,
Yeah.
I was like, this ain't gonna last very long.
Yeah,
I didn't.
Yeah.
I loved the music. I can't say I didn't.
Yeah.
But the heart was in the 80s, and
Yeah. See, the thing. The thing I hated about it at the time is, like we were saying earlier, a lot of cream will rise to the top. But the funny thing is, I remember when like Nirvana and Alice in Chains, all these bands hit all of a sudden. They started, dropping all these bands. I mean, like great bands like Cinderella Motley Crue, that million selling album sellers, years ago, and they went like, and they wanted to sign every band that sounded like Nirvana. It was a cookie cutter time. We're gonna sign nothing but grunge, and eventually people got sick of that, because like anything, you eventually have too much of a consumption of anything, people are going to get sick of it. But at the end of the day, the bands I feel that really, came out of the grunge era that really had any kind of talent, they're the ones that stuck around. I mean, Alice in Chains. And the funny thing about a band like Alice in Chains, even with the death of their original singer, their songs are so good. They were able to find a guy that, kind of has the same type of voice and carry on, and they continue to put out new music. But you had Pearl Jam that they've been doing for over 20 years now, probably closer to 30. But, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, you mentioned Godsmack. They have a new album, I think, coming out soon. So the bands, these bands that have kind of from the grunge scene that have become legendary now, they're still around, because like anything, if you got any kind of talent, those are the bands people are going to, stick behind. And then the ones that kind of just got a deal because they sounded the way they did, a lot of those bands, are people totally forgotten, and they've fallen by the wayside. It's just I think the nature of the music industry.
Oh yeah, it's kind of sad that people do that. Kind of let the others drift off, because looking back, so many people have been influenced by those guys that just aren't there anymore. Yeah,
and it's funny, because a lot of those famous '80s rock guys have either moved to Vegas or Nashville, where a lot of them are even writing music for other, got into semi-retirement, and they're writing tunes and producing other acts, down there in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I used to be still am, like a huge Motley Crue fan, but I could never understand why people would all of a sudden, they're trend followers. I let my mirrors kind of be my judge, if you know what I mean. A lot of bands Motley Crue, they're not popular anymore, I'm going to get rid of all of my Motley Crue albums. I could never understand that.
Yeah, I never, today I've still got my Alice Cooper stuff, the cassettes. Yeah. I've even got an 8-track around somewhere.
I got to ask, if you're an Alice Cooper fan, have you had a chance to hear his latest album that came out, CD or whatever, it came out almost a year ago, but man, it's classic Alice. He's got a lot of original guys from his original band, they're appearing on there, so that's worth checking out if you're an Alice Cooper fan.
I haven't heard it yet. I'm actually going to see him up at the State Fair this year.
Oh, wow,
so I'm trying to hold out to hear any of his new stuff until I get up there.
And the amazing thing about Alice, you got to give it to the guy. The guy's almost 70 years old, and he's still doing it. He's in better shape these days than when he was, half his age. Because back in the day, he was a major alcoholic, from what I understand. But, man, he's been cleaned up and sober, and he's rocking better than ever.
Oh, yeah, he's gone through a lot, and, I can only hope that, I'm doing this when I'm his age, with the enthusiasm and everything,
And the thing I'll tell you about, if you've ever been to an Alice Cooper show, I mean, talk about being entertained. I mean, you're getting quite the live show. I mean, it's more than just the music. I mean, I got to tell people, if you ever get a chance to see Alice Cooper at least once in life, you got to do it.
Yeah, he's one of them on my bucket list to go see before stop touring, and finally get to do it.
I seen Alice Cooper a number of years ago. Very last tour Ronnie James Dio did with Heaven and Hell, and they had when Jeff Tate was still singing with Queensryche, so that was quite a show. But man, I tell you, it was amazing, like seeing Ronnie James Dio up there on stage. I mean, he's a little tiny guy, but man, what a powerhouse he was. I mean, it just amazed me.
Oh yeah, that guy knew how to go. But like I said, all those old bands, I would love to see them. Like I said, Motley Crue's not touring anymore.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing. A lot of these bands are retiring, and are going on their final tour or whatever. And see, I think that's the one sense in when they say rock is dead. I fear that when a lot of these legendary bands play their final concert, I don't know that we'll ever have any legendary acts like that again. Maybe we'll, but I think that's where new bands like you guys come. You got to kind of take the torch and kind of go on from there.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, if you look at it, those are some huge shoes to fill.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Black Sabbath, you had Led Zeppelin back in the days, you know, Creedence, you know, all those guys, you know, and, you know, you've got Godsmack stepping up, you've got Shining On You, you know, Candlebox stepped in there, you know, but to get, like you said, up to that area where Kiss and Motley Crue and all them took it, I think it's just going to take some time because, you know, we did the grunge, we've gone through the hip-hop thing, you know, the techno stuff has been around a little bit, and I think just with every evolution of music and how it evolves, it's just going to take some time, but I think there's going to be some shining bands in there somewhere. Oh, it
got to be, but yeah, it's like I said, I think the best ones are going to last, and the other ones that aren't so good, they'll fall by the wayside, but that's just that's how it's always been, and I bet you 10 years from now, there'll be another wave of music, you know, happening. That's usually, you know, a cycle. And I really enjoyed talking to Jason. Before we wrap it up, I got to ask you, so, like we said, the EP's been out since January, but are there any plans, like, to release any more videos, or you guys have any plans as far as, like, touring across the, like, going on a national tour, or does that kind of depend on how well the EP sells?
Well, we're looking at doing a video here real soon for No More Religion. We got that in the works. We're starting on getting all that plan going. As far as touring, you know, being up and coming, starting out with everything. You know, of course we got plans to tour international, but you know, that's as far as the flip book opens at the moment.
Well, I guess when I say national, I mean like across the U.S. to get, you know, to kind of get the band out there.
Oh yeah, we've got plans. We're taking it in steps because we don't want to, you know, do that
too fast, too quick.
Exactly. You know, we want to take the time to make sure that we're doing our things right. We're not rushing it, and you know, we're not taking away from the fans because that doesn't help us or them either. You know.
Oh, okay. Well, that sounds good. So hopefully by summertime we'll see you guys out there. But thanks so much, Jason, for speaking with me tonight. I really enjoyed it, and please feel free anytime you have anything to promote or you want to do this again. Because you got a huge new fan in me, and I love to spread. That's part of why I do what I do, because I believe in spreading the love. If you know what I mean. For example, like when I discover a new band, I want to tell everybody about, you know, how great this band is. So that's kind of what we're about here. So anytime you want to do this again, please feel free to reach out to me. And I just want to give a shout out to our mutual friend Barbara and thank her for setting this up, the interview, because she sends me a lot of great bands. So thanks so much.
Oh yeah, she's amazing. Thank you for having me on, and
okay,
definitely we'll call you back.
Yeah, and I'll let her know. The interview will probably go up sometime between like April and May. I'm not sure exactly, but I'll let her know once it does. And at that point, you're welcome to post the interview on any of your sites if you wish to do so. But thanks so much, Jason, and I'll be in touch.
All right, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care.